Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. Welcome to the show. Whether you're watching this live on Wednesday night as a vodcast, or if you're watching it anytime after that as a podcast, we're really glad that you decided to be in our audience. We love our audience. They're always intelligent, insightful, and have the best questions. And also, they're all comedians, I've noticed. We're going to miss them tonight. This is a pre-record. I should mention that. This is a pre-recorded visit. You can comment, and if we happen to be available on that day, we will try and respond to those comments.
And don't forget, you should enter the book giveaway because it's still on. It's like live. So if you're watching this live on Wednesday,
please,
April 5th, go ahead and enter. Make sure you enter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So want to also remind everybody to stay tuned after the show for a short video on how to connect with the Voice of Indie podcast. I'm doing good tonight. blogtalkradio.com with hosts Beam Weeks and Gary G's. They're on every Wednesday right after our show. And stay tuned for details afterwards. I don't know who their guest is going to be because we are pre-recording this.
Right.
Also, this coming Saturday, April 8th, on Episode Rewind, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here where you're watching this. We're going to have the replay of Annie Miles, author and the founder of FamilyWealthAndSuccess.com. So that was a really good episode. You'll really like Annie if you didn't connect it with her before. And then next Wednesday, April 12th, is episode 104. And we have a repeat guest, A.G. Flitcher. Andre Gress is his actual name. He was on last April, so it's been like a year.
Yeah.
He's the author of the Boone and Jacques book series. He's from British Columbia, and he was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
he works in a zoo.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So
of course we live in a zoo, but around here.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Just kidding. Okay, so
without any further ado, we really would like to introduce you to our guest tonight, Brooklyn Quintana. See, I was going to mispronounce it again, but Joe Conjal understands, don't you, Joe? I do that all the time. Anyway, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing and Literature from the University of Central Florida. And then she decided that what she really needed to do was to write herself, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Corporate life just wasn't for me. Had to get back to being creative.
Yeah. And you're an artist too, I noticed in your bio.
Yes, I paint. I'm working on learning and teaching myself how to do digital art. Always have been drawing since I was a kid. And the ultimate plan is around the time book 3 comes out is to start breaking up the books into little digestible volumes to do graphic novels.
Oh, that sounds like fun. It really does.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, one of our sons and one of our son-in-laws are artists, and our daughter is. But our son taught himself how to do digital. He did a mural for Coca-Cola bottling company, and
oh wow.
Yeah, but digital was a whole new thing for him.
Oh, it's a whole new world that I was unprepared for, needing to know just so much like intricate technical aspects as well as the art part. It's just mind-boggling. I put it to the side for now while I'm working on book 3. So
yeah, how to do shading and all that kind of stuff, and lighting. Yeah.
It's
a light sources. It's all different. Yeah, he said that. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm sure it can be very rewarding, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm. That's the hope, at least. I think the story translates very well, at least in my mind, to a visual medium. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, if you have the vision for it, I'm sure you can make it happen.
Yeah,
Fingers
I am.
crossed.
I am too. So the first book in the series is this one, Nine of Swords. Um, go ahead and explain to people where Nine of Swords came from. Some of you are going to know.
Nine of Swords got its name from the tarot card, which I admittedly knew nothing about. I was watching a Netflix comedy, and one of the characters just happened to be a tarot reader, and she pulled the 10 of Swords, and I thought it sounded really cool. But nine is like a really important number in my book series, so I had to go find out what Nine of Swords were, and it fit just really well with the theme of book one, so that's where it got its title from.
That's really interesting. So would you like to tell us when you got interested in writing and when you actually started writing? I'm not talking about published writing, but writing.
Yeah, I always wrote stories as a kid. I really enjoyed movies and TV. I was always making things up for like even my stuffed animals. I gave them background stories and little dog days. Like I was that weird kid. So I always really enjoyed storytelling. And in my elementary school, they had a program where like if you wrote a story and they accepted it, you could take off time from English class and they would like print it out for you and you could illustrate the book and they would bind and laminate it and everything. So I was doing that all the time, so much so that they were like, you have to stay in English class at some point. You can't just be writing all the time. So I think that's when I first got into it. And that's when I first started to really enjoy reading as well. And then I wasn't really good at like math or science. So I just stuck with the artsy thing, went to school for it, and then realized it was not a marketable degree. So I went into the business world. And then a few years after that, realized cubicle desk life was just not agreeable for me. So I left that and just decided, all right, I'll write a book.
Awesome. How long did it take you to write Nine of Swords?
It took about 5 months to get the initial manuscript done. And then I had to cut out 40,000 words because it was just unwieldy in length. And I think the whole process took from beginning to end, getting all 13 drafts through, working with the editor and everything, maybe about 9-10 months.
So you cut it down to how many words if you cut out 40,000?
It's about 315,000 words still. So it's
Wow.
a chunky fantasy.
That is. And so you would consider your genre fantasy?
Yes, I am very hesitant to say young adult fantasy, but it could flip-flop either way, depending on how you want to view it.
Oh, young adult?
Yeah, it could be young adult, but it doesn't focus on the young adult themes, but it does have a very young protagonist. So it's very dependent on what bookstore and what podcast I'm talking to, that how they decide to classify it.
Oh, see, I think that young adult is for everybody.
Yeah, I think the way that they've been classifying young adult fantasy is you kind of have to hit certain tropes and markers that I veered wildly in the opposite direction of. So it's at this point, I think people mostly qualify Nine of Swords as young adult when they do, just because the age of the protagonist.
Yeah, and that's, well, I know that's what they do, but I disagree with that because
I do as well, because I think if you pick up a young adult book, you are expecting certain story points to come up that my book just doesn't ever do. So I think it's kind of like a misnomer that would lead you the wrong way to call it young adult.
I agree. That's why I always like to say, but young adult is for all ages, because I mean, look at Hunger Games. That's a young adult. No, it isn't.
There are young adults in it.
There are young adults.
Like the age of the cast should be completely independent on how you're classifying the genre.
I mean, it was a fascinating series. It really was, and wonderful movies and really well done. And that's just to name one. There have been so many over the years. And even when they're made into TV series, it bothers me because they then dumb the book down to make it for teenagers. And it's like, oh, come on. I read all the books. I loved them.
Agreed. I think like when they adapt young adult books, they end up only focusing on like romance aspects or that coming of age aspect, and they throw everything else out the window. So it's one of the reasons I hate calling my book a young adult book, is I don't want people to water it down to just those aspects.
Right. So we'll make it clear that it's
just a fantasy book.
definitely a fantasy book. and I would like to know what is the storyline, and do you have a hero or a heroine, a protagonist that's going to follow through all of your series?
Yeah, so it's the Phineas Fogg series. So it follows the main character, Phineas Fogg. He goes by Finn. It's much easier to say. So he's the protagonist of all 9 books. And book 1 is essentially he turns 12, which at their point is like when you are a moderate adult, and he gets sent to a military school on a tropical island that he is woefully unprepared for. You know, he was sequestered in his home his whole life, so he doesn't know how to talk to people or make friends, and he's very awkward. And he has to try and not die for his first year of school.
Wow, that's
a good goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not
kind
dying.
of like, if you ever read the Harry Potter series, it's like Hogwarts if they were more open about the fact that they expect you to be maimed or killed while you're at school.
There you
okay.
It's almost like going to public school.
Yes, it's essentially, I drew on that a lot. I was like, that was me, just trying to make it through.
Yeah.
That's great. And you want to tell us a little bit about his journey in the 9 of Swords?
Yeah, so his journey is very much, there's like his personal journey of trying to, you know, just be a kid and make friends and try and find out who you are. And then there's his more, I don't know how you would want to describe it, big picture journey, since he is the prince, kind of getting him emotionally and psychologically ready for what that will entail, and, you know, where his place is in the line of succession, what he's going to be expected to do, and how to handle all of that, and the politicking and kind of court politics and everything going on, as well as the fact that they are at a military school, and how you, at 12 years old, emotionally prepare for the concept of, at some point, you're going to have to lead an army and people that you were friends with are going to die, and how you prepare for those eventualities.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot it's a big book. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. I was thinking in terms of it's a lot psychologically for a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I think like, because when you read it as a modern audience, you think of like what our kids are like at 12, but it does have that obviously very stereotypical fantasy setting of vague medieval times. Yeah. So it's a bit of a harsher world, and you have to come to terms with the more brutal reality of everything around you.
Right. Right. And they probably did things at a lot younger age in that fantasy world. So, you know, which actually happened in medieval times in our world.
Yeah, I know. I did a lot of research. I actually took a lot of like medieval history and literature classes while I was at UCF. So there was a lot of, despite the fact that it is a fantasy world, a lot of research did go into it to try and make it more authentic.
Right. To have the right feeling as you read it.
Oddly enough, it drew more on ancient Greece than England, even though it has that vague kind of British feel to it.
Right. Greece is amazing, right?
Oh, definitely. I got really sucked into the Spartan culture, and, you know, moving just a little bit south over to like Rome and everything. I got very sucked into that sword and sandal type of deal. And so I personally don't want to write like the next Gladiator, because there's something about the concept of everything taking place with a lot of sand that just makes me feel warm even reading it. So I like that vague kind of temperate climate of England, but like with that gladiator Spartan approach of like it's brutal, it's rough and tough, and you're gonna have to stab somebody at some point.
Yeah, I think it was probably pretty rough and tough in England too. It seeed like they were constantly being
definitely.
Definitely. Off with their head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The next king.
Oh yeah, no, we definitely drew on the whole War of the Roses thing. It's alluded to in my book a lot. So
good. That's really interesting.
As far as how you write, I know this question is on the minds of all of our audience. It comes up every week.
Every week.
Are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
For book one, I was a plotter, and for book two, I was a pantser. So I have equal parts.
All right.
And going forward, do you think you'll be a hybrid of both?
I can say with absolute certainty, I will never pants a book again. It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, book one was like very smooth sailing trajectory. You know, I would sit down, write a chapter, watch an episode of my favorite show, go back, edit that chapter, and I knew what I was doing.
You knew
book
where
two,
you were going. You could
see I knew what was going to happen. Then I got to book two, and like everything went out the window, and I was like, I'm just going to write by emotion and my thoughts. And I ended up writing chapters out of order, and then I had no chapter one, and I had 30 other chapters, and I was going back and forth, and it was mentally very hard to keep up with. My bedroom looks like a beautiful mind right now. There's like sticky notes everywhere and notebooks. So it was a mess. And I realized a lot harder to attack an undertaking that big to not have everything planned out ahead of time. So we're not going to do that again.
That's interesting. We're pantsers.
Hats off to you. That is impressive. It hurt my brain to try and do it that way.
Well, periodically you do have to go in and put things down, you
have to keep track of everything.
You have to keep track of everything sometimes. So, that's not really plotting, but it is organizing and outlining sort of.
Yeah. But as we write, we find the characters kind of write the book themselves.
Yeah. They go, hey.
Yeah.
So that's the way to do it. I was in that awkward stage where there's going to be 9 books, and this is like the transitional book. And I knew where I wanted them to be, but not quite how I was going to be getting them there. So there's a lot of erasing of a lot of pages.
Oh, believe me, we know a lot of people who are plotters. They do outlines and chapter outlines, and they know exactly where they're going and how they're going to get there and how it's going to end. And, they're very happy. As a matter of fact, the show that we recommend that everybody listen to after ours, I'm thinking Steve wrote a book about it, being a Stephen wrote a book on following an outline. And he thinks it's the only way. No, it wasn't Beam. I'm sure it's Stephen. Yeah, because he's pretty adamant about it.
Well, I support that. Plotting all the way from now on.
Yeah, and another one of our authors, Linda Pirtle, also the same. She was an English teacher and a principal in a school, and she really believes in the whole outline. And I have one more question before we go to commercial. And that is, do you then follow the hero's journey? Do you follow that arc?
Yes and no. I think book one definitely starts out with that traditional hero's journey of you find this obscure character who's suddenly called upon and he goes to meet new people in a new setting. And I think like 80% of book one follows it, and then the ending just completely trashes it and does its own thing. And then book two is just its own anomaly of existence where there is no hero's journey even thought of. It just wildly runs off in its own direction. Because I think in a lot of ways, my protagonist, Finn, is not a hero in a manner of speaking.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll talk a little bit about your second book when we come back.
As soon as we come back. Now, a word from our sponsors.
Mystery hovers in the Magnolia Bluff Public Library. It has nothing to do with the hundreds of suspense novels on its shelves. Caroline McCluskey is the librarian. She finds a crimson hat and a black and white poodle puppy. They belong to Esther Williams. Esther is missing. The police can't find her. Neither can the FBI. Esther's only hope is a ring of 3 women investigators who form the Round Table. The Round Table has already solved one mystery in town, but this time, a woman's life is at stake. The Doggone Diamond Dilemma is now available on Amazon.
They thought the siren was dead. In the novel Siren Song by author George Dismukes, James Harmon shot her twice. Several people saw her dead body sinking slowly into the abyss. But now, in Siren Song 2, evidence suggests that she may still be alive.
She killed that boatload of people. It was her! And she's just getting started!
Angie, that's impossible.
The cold chill up my spine tells me it's not impossible. We've got to start all over again. And this time, do it right.
Siren Song 2. The story continues. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Get your copy today.
It's a murder scene. Like many others. Except the prime suspect is a beautiful woman from Detective Ray Schiller's past. Ray is determined to help her. But at what cost? Targeting him for his interference, the killer threatens all Ray holds dear. He's given terms and a deadline he can't possibly meet. Run, Ray, run. Watch the past come back with a vengeance in Targeted. Don't miss a second. Order now.
And we're back.
Welcome back. Well, I would like to have you tell us a little bit about your second book, which is coming out May 15th, right?
Yep.
And I will pull up that. It's called Blood in the Water. And this is the one that you just kind of let it rip and flew by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, that's the best way of describing what was going on.
What is the second book about?
So book 2 takes place almost immediately in the aftermath of book 1's ending.
Okay.
And it's not your like typical, we did 1 year of school, let's go back and do our next year of school. It's very much, Finn and his friends have to really deal with the catastrophe that happened in book 1 and what that means for them, their school, the whole country, and kind of the underlying through mystery through book 1 and 2 really comes to a head. And in book 2, and the thesis essentially is, what does it mean to be human?
Awesome. It sounds really great. And how many words is that one? Is it as long as the first book? Just wondering.
I hate saying it out loud. It's maybe 10,000 words shorter than the first one.
So it's almost as long.
It's almost as long. I tried really hard to make it just a bit shorter, and then it covers so much, and I didn't want to leave anything out from what was intended to be followed up on. I didn't want to sell people short and just decide to cut it out for no real reason.
So you have a lot of words in you.
It seems like it. I didn't know I was this verbose, but yes, I have a lot to say, I guess.
And a lot to write, because you have a lot to say. All right, let's tell people where they can reach you. All right, so Brooklyn's website is brooklynquintana.com, and it's BROOKLYNQUINTANA, and I'm not going to spell that again. So listen up, people who are listening on the podcast, please. Her Instagram is @brooklyn.quintana. Her TikTok is @TheBrooklynQ. And her YouTube is @BrooklynQ864. Okay, and I hope I didn't go too fast for anybody. All right. Now this one is a little bit different. It's email. This is Brooklyn's email. Email BrooklynQ at MorpheusMediaLLC.com. So that's BROOKLYNQ at MORF nope. PHEUSMEDIALC. And that was while I was reading it, people. So there you go. It's Morpheus with a PH, which is the way Morpheus is spelled. So that's a good thing. Okay. You want to go to the book giveaway?
Yeah, we might as well get it going right now. And we'll leave this up for a little while. And so the book giveaway is the first 3 people, US only, to email BrooklynQ at MorpheusMediaLLC.com will win a paperback copy of 9 of Swords. And I assume you're going to sign it?
I could definitely do that, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So email right away. And even if you're listening to this or watching this tomorrow, or after it's already gone live, go ahead and send in an email to Brooklyn. And if she has any extra copies, that haven't been given away, you never know.
I do. I usually have a ton of them sitting around the house.
Yeah. So go ahead and take a chance. It sounds like a really good book.
I think for your first book, it's always fun when you get your first printing and you get your author's copy. And
yes. I will say it was a very harrowing experience because a lot went wrong with our first printing.
Oh dear.
The layout design of book 1. So I also did all the designs for it. So that was a learning curve. And they did not specify certain things when I sent in the whole template and layout and everything. So things were constantly just slightly askew and it was driving me nuts and it had to be perfectly centered. So we went back and forth for at least 2 months before it was finally corrected.
Wow.
That couldn't be fun. Well, when you get the final product, though.
Then it was really nice. Then it was like a relief. It's like, oh, we're done finally.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, I think. They smell great and they look great and you're just...
Oh, yeah. You just keep touching them. Yeah. I've got like 3 on this side right behind me. I just leave out in my office like a memento, like we've done it. We can keep doing it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I did this.
Yes, I did it and it's done. It's doable. It's just proof that it's doable.
It is. And you're going to do 8 more.
Yes. I don't know why I decided to give myself like this monumental task, but it's what spoke to me. So we're running with it.
Yeah. You need to do it. Whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, you need to go with that. Exactly. The same thing about whether you're going to be a plotter or a pantser. It's just something that our audience really loves to know, but it doesn't mean there's any right way or wrong way.
Oh, definitely.
If we want to get into a really big discussion, we can talk about POV. So point of view for those who are not authors. It's a big discussion right now.
Oh, I can imagine.
And that doesn't bother me either. I can read a book that's from any point of view and enjoy it. So,
this is a very controversial opinion. I know. I hate first-person books. I cannot get into them. I don't like writing it. I don't like reading it. There's something about it I find, I don't know, unyieldy that I own a lot of them. I keep trying, kind of like my attempt at being a pantser. I tried it. Maybe I'll try it again, but I know I should just stick with third person.
Okay. Third person omniscient or third person?
I will read third person anything. I write in third person limited omniscient.
Okay.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
That's the one that I think works best for the story I'm telling.
So you don't give everything away. But...
Yeah, I mean, like the narrator clearly knows everything that's going on, but like if a new character is introduced, he or she's not introduced by name until the character with whom they are now interacting finally learns their name. So you have that kind of buildup of suspense while still having the benefit of knowing everything that's going on.
Knowing everything, yeah. I like that. But then you have some of the great classics were written in all combinations of point of view. So there'll be first person and third person. And
As long as it's not second person, I will give it a try.
yeah, I don't think I could do that.
No, it's very difficult you're like, oh, I'm doing it. Okay. And it's very difficult to get into the groove of the story.
That's very true. Well, so then you mentioned that you're now working on your third book.
Yes.
Does that also have a working title, or does it not?
Its title is The House of Long Nights. So each of the books get their title. I mean, obviously not book one, because that wouldn't work, but each of the subsequent books gets their title from a line from the previous books.
Oh, that's very good. And this one again picks up where the last one left off.
So book 3, because God forbid I ever do anything straightforward, clearly. Book 3 starts halfway through book 2 and then proceeds onward. So it's like a time skip while simultaneously going back to cover things that weren't covered during book 2.
So does your point of view change then?
It does. It shifts a little bit. I'm not going to give anything away, but for some reason, Finn, our primary character, is not around for a little bit for everybody else in book 2. I mean, you still follow the trajectory of his story, but you lose majority of the rest of the cast for unexplained reasons, we'll say. So when book 3 comes back, you actually pick back up with Finn's closest friend.
Finn's perspective,
yeah, and you kind of see what was going on while Finn wasn't with them and what led to the events of when Finn finally rejoins the fray and everything subsequent that happens with that.
Interesting. Sounds really good. Did you have fun writing it?
I have fun writing all of them. I mean, book 2 did have its frustrating moments of writing it out of order and not knowing what was going on, but I think I'm very attached to my characters. They're my brain children at this point. So I have a lot of fun getting to spend time with them and sit down and see where their journey is going to take them.
Oh, yeah. These are your children.
Oh, definitely. I talk about them like they're just real people. And then my friends who don't know that this is my actual career, like, are you all right? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, I think that people who don't write don't get that. But people who do write definitely get that.
Definitely. I think, you're very attached to them. You created their whole personality and everything. So it's fun to spend time with them. Yeah, you created their whole world. You're the master of their universe.
Yeah.
And you know what they think and how they are, and they become very real. I mean,
I think so. I think they definitely have very distinguishable personalities. So it's very easy, I think, when I'm sitting down and I'm plotting out what was going to happen, it's very easy for me to say, well, this character would obviously have this plot point because it jives with their personality. They would do this, whereas like character B wouldn't be in the situation to begin with.
One of the authors that we've had on the show, actually married to the outliner, Linda Pirtle, Caleb Pirtle, has always said that when you have writer's block, it's because you're trying to make that character do something the character would not do.
I think that's a really great way of looking at it.
It is. It was really a eureka moment for me when he said that, because, you will be blocked and you don't understand why you can't move forward, and to realize that something in you knows exactly how that character would act is not letting you take that person out of that personality that they have and the way that they would deal with something. And you have to get that straight. And then that helped me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, I never would have given it thought for that perspective, but yeah, I totally agree with it.
Yeah, because like we were just saying, you know who they are, and if you've ever watched a movie or a TV series where they have the character doing something that is out of character, it takes you right out of the story.
Oh, definitely. There are plenty of shows I watch that are like long running. So you get very attached to the character. And I guess maybe it's because it's my job to tell stories where like by season 15, I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense that this character would do this given the 15 prior seasons we've had.
Yeah. Well, that's how we watch shows. well, that doesn't make any sense. He would never do that.
Right.
Exactly. My whole family gets very irritated when I do that. I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense. And they're like, we're on season 22 of Law and Order. I don't think anybody else is paying this close attention. I'm like, but the detectives, they wouldn't do it, guys. Like, that's not who they are. And nobody else cares.
They pick up evidence without a glove on.
Exactly. Right? I'm like, why are you not having your shoes covered? It's a crime scene.
Yeah.
It's the little things that drive me up a wall.
That's right.
We happen to write crime novels, so believe you me, that really bothers the heck out of us.
Doesn't make sense.
That FBI agent just picked up something with their bare hands. It would never happen.
Yes, I watch so much true crime. Everybody is always surprised when I say I don't write true crime novels. Like, it's my go-to. I like my Law and Order, my true crime documentary is my NCIS. So everybody's like, we're shocked.
Speaking of that,
we love NCIS.
What I was going to ask, yeah, that's a great show. What I was going to ask is, I know you've got a lot planned out on this series of books. A lot of authors, well, there's a few authors, not a lot, I guess, a few authors that take different genres and write in different genres all at the same time. Have you ever thought, or have you thought along those lines of possibly doing a different kind of book, like a true crime book?
Or a murder mystery,
true
crime.
I would definitely, somebody actually asked me that yesterday, and I was like, after doing book 2, I was like, it takes far too much brain power to try and think in reverse because you made a mystery. So I don't think I would do a mystery or a crime. I've kicked around the idea of doing like a fictionalized telling of like my family's history, because I think that's very interesting. And I think in this day and age, people would find it a very interesting story. So I've thought about that. I have it in the back of my mind, but I don't know if I ever wrote another series or had time to do something, I would probably do more fantasy, just because I think that's what really speaks to me the most. But it's back there. The back of my mind's always working on something.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, we're actually doing a book. We're part of a group called the Underground Authors, and they've done 2 seasons of books taking place in a town called Magnolia Bluff. And we've been asked to do the first book of the 3rd season. So that's going to be different than what we've usually written. Everyone wanted us to do it about paranormal investigators.
Well, that makes sense.
So that's what we're doing. So,
all right. So you have like that background knowledge.
Well, yeah. And we also will be able to keep the book pretty accurately to what you actually do see, hear, feel in the field, you know?
Yes, that's a really, I think, interesting, because you don't get a lot of people who would have that specific kind of professional background on it. I think that's awesome.
Well, I guess you can't really call us professionals because we do it for free.
I'm going to call you professionals. I think that's amazing.
So you're going to pay us. Okay, that's good.
No.
Next time I have a ghost going on, I know who to call.
Well, some paranormal investigators do charge, but our team does not. We just really want to investigate, number one, and number 2, or actually this might be number 1, help people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like ghosts. Book 2 really leans hard into that weird love of the paranormal and the surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I decided that when you write a book series, all of the books should have a slightly wildly different genre than the one that came before it. So,
well, we're all about ghosts.
So you would appreciate book 2 probably more than book 1.
I don't know. Book 1 sounds pretty interesting. I like to read most everything. I can't think of a lot of things that I don't like to read. So, you know, I mean, every genre you can think of, I've probably read.
I wish I was that eclectic in my reading.
I'm very eclectic. I will say I'm not a fan of romance novels. I
agree. Yeah.
I've never read one, but anything else I'm up for it, you know. True crime even. That's sad.
You know what? Our sponsors are being very pesky, and they would like us to do our second set of
fine
commercials. So Everyone sit tight.
I'd rather talk books.
We'll be
Go
back.
for it, guys.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes because you're going to be looking
Don't
at
go away.
books that are being advertised.
Yes.
Okay, that's good enough, right?
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
First, there was Siren Song. Then Siren Song 2. Now comes The Siren Hunter, a continuing saga about Angie Holland and her never-ending battle with the mythological denizens that are not even supposed to exist. Is The Siren Hunter a conclusion to the undersea horror? Only the sirens know for sure.
The Siren Hunter, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Or contact this podcast. The trilogy is complete.
People Who Like to Read Want to Get Their Hands on Books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites.
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
Welcome back. I did want to remind you of the email. It's brooklynq@morpheusmediallc.com. And that's where you can write to Brooklyn to get a free copy of her first book, The Nine of Swords.
Should be the 9th book because
No.
it's got 9 in it, right? No, I'm just
No.
kidding.
It makes sense, yeah.
It makes sense, but that's not.
Some
Right.
authors have written like that.
Yeah.
They've actually, I'm trying to think. I think James Patterson did a series where everyone had for number 1, 2, 3 had a number in it.
Yeah.
Depending on which book it was. But he's written so many books.
How can you keep track of James Patterson?
You have to have a number.
And talk about writing in different genres.
Oh,
He's
my
written in
goodness.
everything. And he writes children's book too. So, I mean, yeah, everything. I think children's books would be the most difficult to write.
Agreed. I've given it a try. It wasn't for me.
Yeah. Well, and plus you want to engage them, and the kids so that they'll actually want to read it or be read to from whatever it is. And there always has to be a morality lesson in there. So
Yeah, that's not in my wheelhouse. So
yeah.
maybe one day when I'm older and have kids of my own, maybe it'll be something I'm more capable of doing. But yeah, right now.
You would think we have 6 children and they're all married, and we have 14 grandchildren, and we have a great grandchild on the way. So you would think it would be in our wheelhouse. No, I just would rather read them what somebody else wrote.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the approach I end up with as well.
I found it very difficult. I did sit down and try to write a children's book because I thought, I should be good at that. It's funny, whenever we do paranormal investigations with other teams in around the country and stuff, they will always say to me if there's supposedly a child ghost, or to also this happens to Beth because she has 16 grandchildren, is you talk to them. You have a lot of grandchildren. They'll like you. Okay.
But I don't have any chocolate chip cookies with me.
I know. I'm not sure they know I have 14 grandchildren. So, but yeah,
every time I guess maybe.
Yeah, I think they really like Beth. I'm not sure that they're particularly fond of me. They always like our dog. We bring our little dog on investigations sometimes, quite often actually.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. And we went to one hospital, an abandoned hospital, and the docent there said, "Oh, you brought your dog. That's great. They really love dogs. Keep your recorder right near the dog because they'll talk to the dog." And as soon as we walked in the door, sure enough, there was somebody there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, that gives credence. I always tell people that there's a ghost in the backyard because my dog will I have a very large backyard, and he will go stand dead in the center and stare like midway up at absolutely nothing and just have like dog conversations. And it is really creepy at 3 a.m. I'm like, I don't know what this dog is looking at, but
maybe might hear something.
I think he hears things that I'm not hearing, and I'm very concerned about it.
You know that he can hear things that you can't
hear.
Definitely.
But I don't know. There's like nothing out there because I'll go out and I'm like, what is he staring at? And he won't even acknowledge that I'm there, and it is very frightening sometimes.
Of course. You've watched Signs, right?
Of course.
Okay. Their German Shepherd was prominent in that.
Yeah. It didn't go well for the German Shepherd in that.
No, it was really sad. I had a lot of trouble with that part. And at the time, we had a beautiful German Shepherd. Her name was Raya. And Rob, before he retired, was an air traffic controller. So he would go to work at 3 o'clock in the morning. And Raya would always want to go outside in the backyard at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had just watched Signs, and I was out there with my great big huge German Shepherd.
Tinfoil hat.
Tinfoil hat, glasses of water.
In my baseball bat. But it scared me half to death. It was like, and I'm a paranormal investigator. Things don't scare me, but aliens being in my backyard ready to kill my dog, that scares me.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. Like, I don't want to face that. Like the coyotes, the bobcats, fine. That doesn't bother me. The ghosts or the aliens, that's probably, I watch way too many horror movies, and that has lent itself to the drastic change in genre in book 2. But now every time I'm like, it's a demon. There's a demon in the backyard, guys. And everybody's like, you're crazy.
Well, if your dog isn't very upset and barking crazily, not a demon, not a malevolent spirit, just a spirit that's being nice to him.
I don't know. Maybe they're both plotting against me. It could really go either way.
I see now why you write books. You have a very good imagination.
Yeah, it plays tricks on you sometimes.
Now, did we mention your art at all when we were broadcasting on the air, or was that just in the pre-show?
I think we talked about it briefly at the beginning.
Okay, good.
Because in the introduction, but you had some plans to incorporate your art right into your books.
Yeah, the working plan, because 9 books at 700 plus pages a pop wasn't enough work. Is once book 3 is wrapped up and with my editor, I'm gonna start, I think, doing like 5 chapter chunks for volumes and do graphic novels. So I almost changed my major when I was at UCF. UCF is a very big animation school as well as engineering and feeds into Disney a lot because, they're right there. So I almost changed to animation and art. And then the last minute, I stuck with creative writing. So I've always had that calling to do something with visual medium as well.
But you will do your own art?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a control freak.
That's a lot of work. Your own art and your own ink and
everything.
Your own colorist?
Everything.
That's a big job.
I know. I'm already at the point where I'm like, I'm not sleeping like a normal person anyway, so might as well be more productive.
Well, it really has the bones for a really great graphic novel.
I mean, I think so. Everybody who I know who has read it has said, I can envision everything that's happening very, very clearly. And I think a lot of the themes and like the action would lend itself very well to that medium. And I think you don't get a lot of medieval tropical graphic novels. I think it's a very fun mashup that you don't see a lot. So I think it's going to be really fun to have, nights on a tropical island in a jungle.
And actually, who better to draw it than you? Because it is your vision.
I think so, definitely. I mean, God help any, artist who would want to work with me, because I would be the queen of, that's not right. I want it at this angle. It should be like looking down from here, looking up from here, all of that. All those film classes I took would come into play and be like, no, we need to have it at this angle. This character needs to be in the foreground. And I would just be a nightmare to work with. So I'm just going to do it myself.
Well, keep us posted. That'll be interesting to see. I'd love to see what happens with your graphic novel.
Out.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've never had a graphic novel artist nor author on the podcast before. So that would be...
Maybe I'll be your first.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. It would be really interesting, I think.
Now, are those... I'm not real familiar with graphic novels, so how many, are they cells, that you draw?
Yeah, I think so. So I will admit, I myself am not a big graphic novel person. I was more when I was younger. So I've been buying a lot more, just passively spending my time, with Law and Order and CIS in the background, flipping through pages, trying to get more of a feel for, I think, both how I would approach it from a technical as well as an artistic standpoint. So yeah, it's yet to be determined exactly how we were going to go about this.
And what about audiobooks? Have you produced your book as an audiobook yet?
So that also comes up a lot because it is a long book and people don't want to read these days. I feel like a lot more young people especially prefer audiobooks.
Absolutely.
It's just one of those things as an indie author, where are you going to allocate funds? And getting somebody to record it is just, it's not the most viable option when you're trying to do 9 books plus the graphic novel. And I mean, I have the recording equipment to do it myself because I do podcasts and I do YouTube work and everything, but I've read this book so many times. I'm not really sure that you want my exasperated tone being the one to read it.
Actually, our audiobooks sell better than print.
Yeah.
That's what everybody keeps telling me. And I'm just like, oh, guys, I can't read it again.
Yeah, well, it's the truth.
If you go to Audible, you can have somebody else do it for you for percentage.
For percentage instead of you paying them per hour.
See, that's smart. I should be looking into Audible more.
Check it out anyway. It's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of a business sense, I think that's far more pragmatic. There's no printing costs or anything. It's Audible. You get more of the percentage anyways. It's just one of those.
It's a big.
There's so much things going on at the moment, trying to get everything out and done.
Sure. And talk about a long learning curve.
Yeah, and you still
a really long learning curve because they have so many specifics that you have to follow.
Yeah, and you haven't done your ebook yet, right? Are you planning on doing that?
So the ebook has had multiple technical problems that I am trying to sort out before it goes up because I am a perfectionist. And if it is not absolutely perfect, it's going to drive me crazy. So it is in the works. Somebody is working on it. So hopefully within the year, there will be an ebook of both books out.
Cool.
Good.
Cool.
Good.
That's
I
great.
think people will look forward to that.
Yeah, I think it would definitely get a lot of downloads much quicker just because it's more, compact. You can have like on your Kindle or something. You don't have to have a massive, almost 800-page book in your bag at all times if you want to read it just casually.
Yeah, you can have it on your Kindle. So, and also the audiobook too. People can listen to it on the way to work and home when they're sitting in traffic.
Exactly. We're working on it.
Yeah. And
It'll
really
come in time.
Yeah, it will. But it'll pay for itself. If you do it on a percentage, it's not, thousands of dollars, which yours I'm kind of thinking would be because it's
so long.
That's a lot of words.
It's there. Yeah, there's a lot of talking that needs to be done for those.
But don't get discouraged, people. That's a good book. So.
It's a great book to read. It will be a great book to listen to within the next year or two.
And the truth is, many people still love having a physical book in their hand to read.
Yeah, see, I'm one of those people. So when all my the business side of it keeps telling me, we have to have the Audible, we have to have the ebook, I prefer so much to be able to hold the book. So in my mind, I'm just like, well, everybody's like me. And then all of my friends who read are like, no, not everybody has the space to have floor to ceiling bookcases just shoved full of books like you. You need to have an audiobook for reasonable people. And I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah. They really do like to listen on the way to and from work.
I love the paperback myself. So.
He does. He likes to have a book.
That's my preference.
See, somebody's supporting me here.
Yeah, he always buys the book. I will get the same book on Kindle because I'd rather have it on Kindle.
It's different things for different people.
Yes, some people really love audios, so it's really. I'd have to say more people like the audiobooks. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't because I'm really glad that people do like audiobooks and buy them. I'm thankful for that. But I like to put my own inflection on things and have the words. And plus I go back and reread things. So you can only really do that with a printed book, whether it's e-print or paperback or hardcover.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for somebody who's wanting to get started writing but hasn't had the gumption to get up and do it?
I guess my biggest advice would be make sure that that's what you want to do. Because I think everybody thinks that you just sit down and you write a book and it's all hunky-dory and everything's fine. And people don't realize how much work it really is to write the book, find an editor, work with the editor, get it done, write the book again, and you keep going back and forth. Then if you want to do traditional publishing, having to query people, get an agent, get a lot of rejections. You have to have the tough skin for people to tell you we don't like it. And then you kind of have to get used to the mentality of not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like your work. It's hard. And I don't think it's for everybody, which is probably terrible advice. I think it's one of those jobs where you really have to want to do it and to be okay with not seeing immediate success. It's a long haul job and it takes a lot of work other than actually writing. You have to market, you have to do interviews like these. You have to get out there, be in the public, you have to talk to people, which is very hard for a lot of artsy people, myself included. So yeah, I think my biggest advice would be if you're thinking about it, it better be your passion in life. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to go well and it's going to be very discouraging.
Yeah, I think marketing is the most difficult thing for most authors, is not understanding or expecting that part of the whole business. It's very difficult, and self-promotion is probably very difficult for a lot of people. You just have to promote yourself and you have to promote your work.
Consistently.
And also what you mentioned about not expecting to be a success right away. I'd say don't even write to be a success, right? Because you love to write. You love to read and you love to write. It's obvious you love to write. And that's why you do it. And to be able to make a living doing it, that's a gravy.
When you consider there's probably 2 million books at least on Amazon. Right?
Oh, definitely. It's a very hard job. And I know, like, especially my friends and everything just think I just write a book and it's done and it's out there. And I'm like, I'm glued to my phone. I'm constantly sending out emails. I'm responding to emails. I like getting to do interviews like this. I wanted to be an actress, so being able to talk in front of people, I excel at. It's when I have to talk amongst people in a room and people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, what's your book about?" I'm like, "Oh God, what is it about? I don't even know. Please don't ask me." So it's very different, and you really have to be like practicing all the time, having people passively ask you just like in day-to-day conversation, so you're just not an awkward mess. Yeah. So I think there's a lot that goes into it that people aren't, I think, aware of.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. There is. It's definitely more than just sitting down and writing, which not even that part is easy. So.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, like I said, book 2 was like just mental gymnastics all the time. I was like constantly frazzled because I was like, oh, plot point, and then I'd have to write it down like an absolute crazy person. I have my like, little notes on my phone and something would come to mind, and I was finally like, oh, I can get back to chapter 3 even though I'm on chapter 41 right now, and go back and fix it. So yeah, it's a lot of brain power, a lot of work goes into it.
Yes, and then we're talking rewrites, editing.
Oh yes, yeah.
So in a way, it's sort of like having a kid, but then after that, it's all over with. Them. You still have to raise the kid.
You can't just leave them in a forest somewhere. Like you have to raise them to be successful. So it's very much like that. Like
there you
go. Day-to-day thing, checking in on it. Like, how are my analytics doing? Have I sold more? Do I need to raise or lower prices? That kind of deal. Yeah. There's like a lot of business acumen goes into it also.
Yeah, a lot of people are listening going, analytics?
Oh, no.
Yes, if you don't have a running analytics page, you're missing out, guys.
Well, want to thank you for being on the show with us and sharing.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for teaching me about the whole Audible book thing.
We didn't teach you anything. We gave you a little hint.
Just a little.
I appreciate it. Little hints go a long way in this business.
No problem. And so, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I think we've covered everything, unless there's something else you need to say.
No, just thank you guys so much for chatting. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being on the show.
We're going to move you over to the side now.
All right.
And stick around, and we'll be back with you after we go off the air here. Want to remind everybody about the Voice of Indie podcast. Stay tuned here in a minute, and you'll see the actual directions on how to get over to that and how to watch and listen to their podcast, I should say.
Listen.
Tune in next week for Andre Gress. A.G. Fletcher is what he writes under from Canada. He'll be on as our guest at 7 o'clock next Wednesday Eastern time here in the U.S., and make sure you change that over for your own time zones. And I guess, unless you have anything. Oh, and I did want to put up Siren Hunter here. This is one of our books. George Dismukes.
It's not our book. George wrote it.
It's a book that we have at our house because George sent it to us. He was kind enough to do that. And you saw it in the commercial. So it's a really good book. Pick it up. And until next time.
That's all, folks.
Bye.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators. Learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.